Yes, if it's on your phone, you won't see it. You don't have
Oh,
it.
okay.
There is a way to
Debunking is streaming live on YouTube.
All right.
Neat.
Okay. All right. There is a way that you can get it on the phone. Tom, could you explain, please?
Yeah, well, I'll have to actually try it. Touche.
Oh, all right. Okay. Oh, turn down the volume on your YouTube, or turn it off. That's the first thing. I got to remember to do that as well, or else we're going to have that reverb kick back. I'm going to have these delays. See, we're getting stuck here. Don't worry about it. Everyone's frozen for just a moment. Yeah, I know, right? We're all frozen in time. Are we? Or is it just from my end?
I can see everyone.
Ooh, who's this? All right.
It's just me trying to see how to change the setting.
All right.
Are we on YouTube? I can't see us on YouTube.
I don't see anything yet.
Coming up. Okay, relax. It's coming up. It's coming up. Oh gosh. You guys, oh my gosh. I've herded cats. It's a lot easier to herd cats. Okay. Just all right. I'm churning over here. I'm churning.
Venable when came on.
I may switch over to my iPad because no, it's coming up. See over here where I am? Ooh. So I live near the White House.
Ooh.
And it's Labor Day.
Yep.
It's Labor Day weekend, and everybody and their sister, aunt, uncle, baby, daddy, mama's baby, all of that stuff, they're online because, you know, COVID, right? Yeah. And we also invited a gazillion people. So I'm hoping, see, we're getting stuck here. Okay, Jesus, don't worry about it. Everyone's frozen for just a, ooh, and
it's coming up on YouTube. It says you're live.
Moment. Yeah, I know, right? All frozen in time. Are we? Or it's just from my end?
I can see everyone.
Ooh, who's this?
It's working.
All right.
It's just me trying to see how to change the setting.
So are we live on YouTube? Because I can't see it on YouTube.
I can't either.
All right.
Oh, now, okay, I can see it now.
Oh,
all right.
Yep, I see it.
I can see it on YouTube.
Okay, just I'm still churning here from my end. So everything's going to reverb back until top chat. Am I at top? What am I supposed to do here? Top chat? No, live chat. Okay. Because I still have to do some things. Yeah. All right. Now I need to turn down this volume. Gosh darn it.
So Simon is on YouTube live, and he's, introduced himself. So just so you know, Queen Osset.
All right. Okay. We're here. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good. I've asked, who needs a hammer? Can we look at some people? Can you see people in my live chat and see who has a hammer?
Simon has a hammer.
Is he the only one?
It looks like it.
Looks like he's the only one.
You can put me on it too if you want.
All right, let me see how I do this. Oh God, you guys asked me to do like stuff.
All gonna be okay.
And hi everyone in the live chat. We're coming on shortly. Just
all right. Yes.
Last organizational bits.
Thank you, Kasha. So I think that, how do you do this? There's 3 dots over here. I can give someone a hammer. Yeah. All right. Make a moderator.
Yeah.
All right. Arcane Panda, I've made you a moderator.
Okay.
Right.
Uh, 88.
Jen. Whoa. Okay. Moderator here. Ooh. Julianne Victoria. Oh, hi, Julianne. I'm going to make you a moderator as well. Cleo 76. I'm going to make you a mod.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Natalie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Can't complain.
Gosh. Who's in the mood for a cocktail already?
Good.
Laura.
Whew,
Holy.
okay. Yeah. Wow.
So
You
maybe
guys
while
are
doing the
just,
Queen Osset, maybe while you're doing it, I'm going to introduce us and
yes,
everyone
sure.
can say
Well,
hello quickly.
yeah, do that while I'm setting up mods. Oh, please, everybody's watching us. Everyone looks gorgeous. But it's not that kind of show. I mean, seriously, come on. Ooh, Bosade, thank you. I'm going to make you a mod, Bosade.
Okay,
I'm going
so
to do, I'm sorry, I'm going to do like Chris over at Slip the Trap. He makes everybody who comes into the chat a moderator. Like he has. All right. I'm thinking we should be covered. Yes?
Mhm.
All right. I'm looking for some. All right. Put that down. Okay. All right. Here we are. We're good?
be good. 100
Welcome.
people.
Wait, before Kash, I know you want to go in and get there.
No, I'm just saying 100
Oh,
people.
okay. My gosh, it's how many of us? It's fantastic. I'm on 2 pages here, and this is just so awesome for me, right? So you can see I beat my face and everything like that. So even though we look good, I mean, if you're gonna go into war, this is what we gotta do, right? Okay. No worries, nothing wrong with that, all right? Whatever we have to do to boost our confidence level. But I wanted to say, first of all, thank you all so much for being here and ready to jump in. I'm gonna have Kasha go over some technical things that need to be addressed first. And then I'll give you all a little intro as to maybe why we're here, outside of the emails that I have sent you as well, all right? Okay, Kasha, you're on.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to our first community panel. So Queen Osset, Renee, Tom Benjamin, or Ben, and myself got together to talk about important things. And we want to start to talk about inclusion and diversity in our community. And yeah, we're really grateful and happy that you guys all responded with a yes to the invitation. It's lovely to see so many of you here. And as Queen Osset said, just a few technical questions before, organizational things, not even questions, tips before we go on. So I think everybody kind of gets it, but yes, please keep muted just to, get the outside noise out. It's one person, one mic, because you all know how Zoom works. Like if 2 people speak, nobody can hear anything. So if you would like to speak or speak next, maybe we can raise our hand and then we can somehow pick people maybe. And nobody is going to be forced to speak. So obviously, we want you to feel safe and everybody can speak up when they feel like they want to share something from themselves. And for the chat participants, so also welcome to everybody in the live chat. And if you guys have any questions, I think maybe the best thing to do is to maybe keep them for a time being to yourself. So we have people moderating the chat, but we would like to get the questions kind of together at some point. So maybe if you have questions that come up, just write them down for yourselves and then you can write them in the chat, maybe closer to the end so we can answer some questions if we have time, but also we will gather the questions so maybe we can answer them next time or answer them after the chat. And I would like everybody from our guests on the panel to maybe introduce themselves very quickly, just for the time reasons, please just say your name and maybe name of your channel, so we know mostly who we are, but for maybe people in the live chat, it would be lovely. And I just want everybody to remember that we here not to like trying to be right. We just want to do better. We want to find great solutions, and we want our community to be just equal and thriving and creative and respectful. So please introduce yourselves, and maybe we start with Maha. And I just see Maha. So maybe we start with Maha, and then I will maybe ask the next person whom I see. You have to unmute yourself, darling.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kasha. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Queen Asset, for organizing this. I'm really excited. This is a really important topic. My name is Maha from Maha's Treasure Box, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you. James?
Hi, my name's James. My channel name's James Feeney. I'm really excited to be here and to share the space with all of you.
Thank you. Anthony?
Hi, I'm Ethany from Ethany, and I'm really excited to be here and to try to learn to be a better ally.
Will?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm Will from Atypical Tarot. Thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to discuss this important topic.
Thanks. Arcane Panda?
Hi, I'm Panda Bennett from Arcane Panda, and I am just so excited to be here with all of you guys. And it just really gives me hope to be able to even have this conversation and have this safe space to do this. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Emmett?
Hi, my name is Emmett. My pronouns are they, them, and I am very grateful to be invited to this panel. I have a very small channel, so thank you so much to Queen Asset and the organizers for inviting me.
Thank you. Larissa?
Hi everyone, I'm Larissa from the Bard's Lament, and I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. Jen?
Hello, I'm Jen from Jen's Balanced Tarot, and just like everybody else is saying, I'm really grateful to be here to be able to learn, grow, and do better. So thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion.
Thanks. John?
Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Ong. I'm John C. Ong on Instagram. Thanks, Kasia, for inviting me. I think it's important to have this conversation, especially as racial sensitivity trainings are even politicized in this current political moment here in the US.
Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie. My channel is Peekaboo Rose, and thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion and having this awesome live panel here to join in.
Thanks. Shaniqua?
Hi, I'm Shaniqua. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm known both Instagram and YouTube from my name, What Shaniqua's Into. And like everybody else said, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie. My channel is Sanskrit Blue, and it's just a complete honor and a pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me and welcoming me to be part of this. I'll say I may disappear in and out from time to time because I'm working with a client today. So that may be necessary, but I'm so happy to be here. So thank you.
Thanks. Kim?
Hi there, I am Kim from Abundant Life Tarot, and I'm super excited and grateful to be here to discuss this timely and very important discussion. And yeah, can't wait to get into it.
Thank you. And Havana?
Hi, I'm Havana from Sparkle Divine Tarot, and like everyone else, I'm really excited to be a part of this panel and this very timely discussion.
Liz?
Hey everyone, I'm Liz from West Star Tarot, and I'm really happy to be part of this discussion. And It's giving me hope for our community. So thank you for including me.
Thanks. Kellyanne?
Hello, I'm Kellyanne Maddox. My channel is Kellyanne Maddox on YouTube. I'm really honoured, like everybody else, to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I may have to pop off a bit early depending on how long we go on for, but I will be here for the majority of the time, and I'm looking forward to talking about the issues. Thank you.
Thanks. Simon?
Hi everybody, so my name's Simon. I'm from the channel The Hermit's Cave. What can I say other than what everybody else has said? It's such an honour and quite humbling actually to be invited with such great people from great channels. I'm here to learn, to listen, and hopefully share. Thank you.
Thank you. And Benabel?
Hi, I'm Benabel. My YouTube channel is Benabel, and I'm really excited to be here to learn. And I like to see that there's so many old face friends, and glad to meet new faces as well.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. I think I got everybody. I hope so. I moved the pages. Is there anyone I missed out on? I don't think so, right? So welcome everyone again, and thank you. And I think Queen Osset, back to you now.
Okay. Again, no, thank you to all of you. So I'm looking at my screen, and right off the top, I'm emotional. Because what I see is a representation of my world. Seriously, this is what I would like my world to look like. And I don't know what it took, call it the gods and the goddesses, spirits, my ego, which are my ancestors, making this happen, bringing this together. I don't know if you all can see, like all of yourselves right here. All of us are part of this community. When I spoke with my co-host, I said I wanted to avoid the words race, races, and racism, right? Those are trigger words, and I get it. And I know it makes a lot of people defensive, no matter which end of the spectrum that you're on. So let's try not to use those words too much, right? Let's not use those words as a fail-safe, a fallout, a cushion, so to speak, right? Let's create new dialogue. This is what I want us to do now, right? All of us, if you're looking at each other, we've all been through something. We've all had our experiences. So today, I don't want to rehash what we've gone through. Today, I'm hoping to come up with, let's start excavating the roots. Maybe we might not come up with any solutions today, but you have to start, right? Every journey begins with the first step and et cetera, you know, one grain of sand, one little bit at a time. And the fact that you all showed up here today tells me that you were willing to step in. Okay, now you stepped in, but now we have to move forward, right? And there's a couple of things that I do want to talk about, or issues that I want to discuss, or things that I want us to look at a little bit closely so we can move forward. So yes, this conversation may cause triggers, right? Remember that everyone is speaking from their own experiences and insights. So you'll never understand what I have gone through, okay? Many of you have been giving a selected, predetermined amount of questions. We may not address those questions, but they're just jumping off points. They're just things for you to, you know, get the juices flowing, looking at things from a different perspective. That's all, right? So this is not a Q&A sort of thing. I want to keep it very organic. Compassion is to be exercised from all sides. And I can't see what's going on in YouTube. Simon, you got that, right? And whoever else is watching the chat, okay? Many of you have hammers. Don't hold back, all right? I'm not going to tolerate it, but compassion is to be exercised on all sides. Now, that does not mean that it's going to be warm and fuzzy or that I'm going to hold your hand, all right? That would be called, what is that word? What is that phrase? That's a catchphrase nowadays. What's that word, that phrase? Anyone can tell me what that would be?
Emotional labor.
Yes, exactly, right? Okay. Now, you know, labor, I do laborious work. I planned on getting paid for it. I will be submitting a bill to each and every one of you moving forward, okay? All right. Now, what brought me here today, what caused me to do this is something that I have been mulling over actually for a couple of years from I started my YouTube channel almost 3 years ago. If you've watched any of my walkthroughs and all of that, I have never not discussed the lack of representation, diversity, inclusion, or all of that, right? I found myself many years ago learning a system that was not created with me in mind, the tarot. And 3 years ago, I entered a community that was not created with me in mind. So I put on my big girl pants and jumped in anyway. I made myself notice. I said, hey, I'm here and you're not gonna get rid of me. Now I did get some private comments and see, I'm still here, right? So I want you to understand the background that I'm coming from. So when I spoke with Kasha, Ben, and Renee, they know a lot of my spiky words. They've heard a lot of spiky commentary coming from me, right? Just so you can get a better understanding. That's one of the things that we should be allowed is to express our anger with things. So when everything hit the fan, May and June, there were a lot of voices, there was a lot of noise, there was a lot of activity, all kinds of shenanigans going on. And what I found, what was happening, was that those voices that needed to be heard were being drowned out. And I know that many of us had good intentions, but as I said, I have a better time herding cats than trying to go through all the stuff, the emotional crap that has been put out there. So I decided, okay, we're gonna try it this way. This is the only way to pull as many people that I can together so that you all can go out into your respective communities with a little bit of knowledge and a bit more awareness, right? So what I was doing on the reverse side is something called Bystander Intervention. You know what that is? That's where we are right now. This is a bystander intervention. Okay, so 5 steps, real quick. Now, one of the, how we learned this, Renee, where are you, Renee? Oh, there you go, you're at the top, okay. I had noticed in different areas of my life that small pockets, groups of people were getting together to discuss this, right? This social situation that we're dealing with, but I never saw it happening in the tarot community. Unless I missed it, I was not invited to that conversation. Okay, which tells me, I don't know what was going on. What, we're too busy, didn't think it could happen, all of that, right? So here's proof positive that it can happen. Bystander intervention is when you take notice of what is happening around you, and then you evaluate and assess everything, what appears to be happening. And as I said, the voices that needed to be heard, those of us that we were all fighting for, our voices were being diminished. My own voice, I couldn't hear it. So all the din of what everyone was trying to do, call themselves trying to do in speaking up for me. But obviously I have my own tongue, right? Okay. The second thing is to consider whether the situation called for action. Well, obviously it did. This is the only way to make something happen, right? The third is to ask yourself, am I responsible? And you might think, I am up until a point. And you're here, that tells me that you are, whether you realize it or not, responsible. How far you go is up to you, right? But I'm going to tell you how far you need to go in order to make a shift and a change. And you might be like, what is she talking about telling me? And it's not coming from a Black woman's perspective of what you need to do. It's coming from the human perspective of what needs to be done. Okay? And the only way you can get the idea, the instructions, is to be still for a minute and listen, right? Someone has to do it. So sometimes a bystander might simply just watch or ignore what is going on, okay? And deciding to take responsibility means taking action. That means sometimes directly intervening, not necessarily a warm and fuzzy place that people want to be in, okay? It's up to you to decide whether you want to take responsibility or not. Now, step 4, you can choose the action that you want to take. You have the power to intervene. You do. If you see something, you have the power to intervene. But this is not about shaming, blaming, name calling, finger pointing. No, we will only cause the situation to escalate. And I've witnessed this. Okay, I've seen this on social media. The 5th thing, can you do it safely? This is something else you should ask yourself, right? Now, this doesn't have to be the physicality of it. We're talking also about self-care, mental health, taking care of yourself. Can you do it safely? See, in order for a change to happen on the level that we're talking about, you have to make that commitment. You have to make that ultimate commitment to the freaking human race. You have to. And it's not easy. It's not pretty. It will cost you on many levels. And long after we are gone, you will leave people behind. Think of it. What would you want to leave behind? When you had an opportunity to step in and make a change, do you want people to say, oh, well, she didn't do much, or, you know, she did that thing 6 months ago. She did that thing, you know, a year ago. I did my part. It's not enough. You have to continue to grind at this and chip away at this and drive down deep and excavate. Like, seriously, you have to, you cannot be afraid to expose the dead roots of this. We are dealing with something that has permeated every facet of my life, every facet. Think of anything in your own life. There is nothing I can do. When I walk out my door, I am a walking target. Again, intervene to help end a situation. Remember, you have the power. So that's my intro. Any questions? Any voices? Don't get silent now.
Would you like me to read from the chat?
Sure.
There's quite a few comments coming, but Yvette Soto was the first one. I think we're all agreed on this really, but she's saying that as a community, we need to come together. She says on a weekly basis, but however often that is, to discuss how this community can come together and the steps to be taken on how to make personal differences. And I know this is probably the start of something much bigger, isn't it? This is the first step. Also, our anger is to be with the status quo as it is, the sabotaging and the dirty games our government is playing with our lives and our rights as human beings. And then there's just a lot of people thanking you for your opening comment, and it's touched a lot of people.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Larissa.
So I also want to echo that. I thought that was so powerfully said, and just, yeah, hands up for that. And also to echo what Simon said, I think to discuss, but then also I think supporting each other and making that change, because like you said, it's exhausting, and you can have the best of intentions and always be intervening no matter which side you are, whether you're standing for someone else or standing for yourself. But like the constant hate, the constant, you know, not that everything's negative, but when you're in this and you're seeing these stories all the time and you're standing up and you're getting backlash before it, it's a lot. It's exhausting. And sometimes checking out, I think, can be a form of kind of defense just to protect yourself. And I think that that's why we need that space to also be like, hey, I stood up for somebody this week and I got blasted for it and it hurt and I cried and I don't know if I can do this, because I think we need that too. Otherwise, I don't think that people are going to feel like they have the stamina to keep this fight up for their whole lives. And I think that, like you said, I want my nephew to grow up and not be, you know, killed in the street, but we can't have that happen without this being something that I work on for the next 50 years. And that means having people there to just say, hey, we get it. It's hard. It was hard for me too. And if you need to cry or just be like, I don't know if I can do this, and I'm here for you in that moment too.
Okay. Anyone else?
You know, Seth, could we ask for some clarification? One of the comments.
Yes.
And it sprang into my mind as well. It's from Ink and Flame. She said she's a little bit confused, if she's honest. She can't tell if making a stand back in June was causing excess noise or taking action that is needed.
Okay, so we're going to address some things, okay? So I backtracked to a couple of things that happened back in June. Taking a stand, that would depend on your point of view or your perspective when you say taking a stand, all right? So Julie from Peekaboo Rose, darling, I'm calling on you.
Yes.
All right, darling. So, you know, I sent you this message privately. You have posted, what is it? An announcement from Graydon House. See, this is, okay, so this is one of the things you're gonna know about me. I have no qualms with calling people out. I don't. If you put yourself on social media, that means that you have declared that you are a person that's available for me to tap into. I'm just saying, okay? Graydon House, they created a post and they said that they were opening themselves up to submissions for Black people up until September 8th. That was their specifics, okay? So on the surface, it looks like a great opportunity, right? All aspiring authors, yes. Graydon House is a subsidiary of
Macmillan.
Macmillan, okay. So I went into Graydon House. Back then, I didn't see an editor who was a person of color. I went through their book list. I didn't see where they had read any books written by a person of color. All, for the most part, all of their authors were non-people of color. And yet they were opening themselves up to accept manuscripts written by Black people, not people of color. You see the difference? Number one. See, that's a little seed of a problem right there, because now we're profiling. So I was asking someone else, well, how are they going to determine who is Black? Right? What they're gonna have, like Shanae Alize, like, you know, the typical stereotypical names, or suppose you get someone named Jordan Bryant, or Ricardo Grant, or Angela Buchanan. How are they going to make the determination that these are Black authors, right? Does everyone have a profile picture? Are you required to have a profile picture? I wanted to do some digging. So to answer that question is, okay, so that was the start. You got people to start doing some things, basically pander you, throw you some things. And we got so happy that, oh my gosh, they're responding. Where's the work? Where's the follow-up? September 8th is 2 days away from here. No one has responded to how they're going to make that determination. And that's what I'm talking about. When you see things like this, you got to call it what it is. Like, how is this going to be addressed? How are you going to make that determination? Who is a Black person, not a person of color, for you to accept their manuscript? Why September 8th? Why not till September 30th? Why such a short window? So many questions. Why? Why now? How is it that you, as a person who've never read any fiction, any nonfiction, anything created by a person of color, going to determine that this is actually a manuscript of worth? Right? Because let's be real, how many white people have the experience of being around Blackness totally? Right? So, I'm West Indian and, rum punch and all of that things, and I start talking patois and all of them things there. You don't know what I'm saying. So as a white person, you're thinking I'm speaking broken English, I'm uneducated. So we started the uproar. So that's what I mean. The noise was so overwhelming that those questions were not addressed. Here we are 3 months later. Are those questions addressed? Has any awareness really been brought to the situation? What changes have been made? Like, what tangible change has been made in 90 days? I know in the States, you have a 90-day probationary period when you get a job. Day 91, they make the decision whether they're going to keep you or not. We're 90 days in. What change have we seen? You paint some streets, you take down some statues. Do you really think that is the change that needs to be made, that's going to be long lasting? Right? You have to remember that our books and our art and our tarot decks represent life. Right? Any other questions?
I think maybe it's a good time to ask some of our guests, what does inclusion mean to them?
Yeah.
Or to us in general? Like, I'm not exempting myself out of it, but I think that may be a good one to start with, especially when it comes to our tarot community, book community as well. Because I can say for myself that one of the changes that I noticed for myself, I have to admit, I was never interested in reading books of Black authors, not because they were Black, it just seemed like not my world, But now, like, I'm reading these books and I'm actually learning so much. And I think that's the point that I wanted to make from myself, that if we allow other people to speak their stories, we can benefit, all of us, so much, and we can actually become richer as people in our personal lives, in the community as well. And I think everybody can benefit from this, people who have the stories, amazing stories to share, to have the voice to share them, and also for other people to learn more and get richer from that. So the question may be that we can ask openly, and you guys maybe have something to say about it. Like, what does inclusion mean to you? Like, what would you like to see in the community if we wanted to think of our community as inclusive?
Shaniqua, you had your hand up.
Well, again, I want to say thank you for having me here. And I think that when it comes to inclusion, it's a very fine line to walk, especially when you think about generations, even centuries of intentional disenfranchisement being directed at particular communities. I can speak for myself as a Black woman. When you want to be inclusive, there's this fine line between actually taking someone in and accepting what distinguishes them from the group that you're a part of, and celebrating that and looking to learn from that, versus saying, hey, come in here and be like us. Remove what makes you unique, remove your identifiers, and be absorbed rather than accepted and included. I think about like what Jane Elliott said. She's a social activist. And she was giving an interview a few years ago, and someone asked her about a previous quote she'd made about wishing to see America like a melting pot. And she said that she no longer believed in that. She didn't want America to be a melting pot, because if you put a bunch of cheeses into a heated bowl together, you're going to end up with one big new cheese sauce. And instead, it should be more like fried rice, where it is a dish, but it's made up of distinguished pieces that are themselves carrots, themselves peas, themselves grains of rice, that come together without losing themselves. And I see a lot of what appears to be more like pandering rather than inclusion. I think the example that Queen Osset just gave with the book publisher saying, hey, we've never made any attempt or effort at being inclusive before, but for this little window, if you identify as Black, we'll look at your manuscript. That's offensive to me personally. That is offensive, because now that the social climate has made it okay for you to do so, you want to pretend like you care about my voice and my experiences. That's not inclusion. That's simply performative allyship. That's fake. That's not real. And it won't create any sort of lasting change. So when you're bringing in people, or saying that you want to bring in people that come from systemically disenfranchised groups, we have to look at enfranchising that group so that we can be the distinguished pea or carrot in the fried rice, rather than just, oh, look, this poor sprinkled out, not unified group that all identify under this moniker. Let's pluck a few from there and say, okay, yay, we did our part. That's not inclusion.
Yeah, and do it until 8th of September, right?
Right,
Even
right.
this time limitation was just so kind of, yeah.
Wow.
So why we mention it, I think, thanks, Shaniqua, it's for also publishing houses to, hopefully some of those people will listen to this, because it's very important, the optical allyship and this performative kind of allyship. Anyone else? Would like?
I think of, oh, Larissa, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I had two thoughts. One of them is in terms of elevating voices and things, even in tarot walkthroughs, where I think that one thing I do think is that decks are getting better at becoming more inclusive. We still have a ways to go, but I think we can all agree that versus even 10 years ago, we're seeing a lot more options. But with that, I would really love when people get a deck that reflects a part of their culture and they're walking through it, even if it's only one card, that they really go into those stories, because I feel like, I may be a Black person and I may identify as a Black witch, but I don't necessarily know everything about Voodoo, or I don't necessarily know everything about Eastern traditions. And so you get these decks and you're looking at them, it's like, this is beautiful, but I know nothing about this. And I would just really like it if somebody, like, whether it's because you're from LGBTQ, or if you have an impediment and you see a card with somebody with a wheelchair as a chariot, I would really like people to include their cultural or whatever perspectives, because I feel like that is glossed over, and it's just like, oh, look, here's Native American talking to an eagle. Great, we expected that in this deck. Here's somebody working with their chakras. Like, I would like people to really bring their cultures in. So those of us who are getting these decks that are going to have a bunch of perspectives that we don't know, you hear those voices and you actually learn about it, and not just see it, but hear people's stories. That's something that I would like.
Okay. John?
Hi, I just wanted to also clarify where your challenge is around the question of the publisher. whether it's specific to the time limit. And so there's this impression that this is kind of like jumping on a trend. So I'm a sociologist in my day job. And I edit an academic journal. And for us, there has been more of a move to challenge and to acknowledge the politics in knowledge production. And so to offer modes of accessibility to new authors, first generation scholars as well, and to also challenge any potential authors about who they cite and whether there seems to be a bias, whether it's gendered or race, that has to be interrogated. And so those mechanisms are slowly being put in place in the process of academic publishing. And so for me, just hearing about that example, I would challenge the time limitation of it, but perhaps it is just a start of a step to acknowledge that hierarchy in knowledge production that we really should challenge.
Okay, I agree. Havana, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say that when you were asking what inclusion looks like, I think for me, inclusion sounds a lot like what everyone else is saying, but I think it's also very important, especially with a lot of these mass market companies, where they'll release a deck that has people of color in it, but like you were saying before, they don't have any people of color as informing the creation of that deck. So a lot of times they end up inadvertently offending people because they're just trying to check boxes.
Right.
I have family members who've worked in Hollywood and they've been creative informants on shows, but when they speak up to talk about their personal experiences as being a Black individual, they're quieted, they're spoken over, they're told, oh, well, we don't think that's going to work for this show. And I suspect that that's something that happens a lot in the publishing communities. So for me, inclusion would look like actually hiring people whose backgrounds come from the people that you're trying to portray in books, in decks, whatever it is that you might be trying to do.
Kim had her hand up a moment ago. I don't know if
Who?
Kim. Abundant Love.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Kim. I'm sorry.
No worries. So inclusion for me looks like modern decks actually having people of color. To have a modern deck created and then to maybe have one person of color out of maybe a 78 card deck or a 54 card deck that's offensive too. And so trying to find that balance of inclusive or to include everyone and then also trying to crank out these decks so fast, I think we are losing an opportunity to really work with one another. It wouldn't take any time for publishers to send out surveys or put that out in their social media to reach out for real feedback. People would be more than happy to do that. It's weird to me to see a modern deck representing 2020 and then there's just a few people, or when they do have a person of color, it's someone in tribal garb. My people have been here, albeit from slave trade, but they've been here for hundreds of years. And I feel like there's a big gap showing that. Tribal people, that means a lot to me to see that, but that's not the only representation of Black people either. So, it's a complicated issue. And so I think it is important that we talk about that. But inclusivity means having a deck that really genuinely represents people. And it's from a more organic thing than just throwing in a couple of people to crank that deck out real fast.
Larissa, will you share what you put in chat just now so the folks on YouTube can hear what you said?
Sure. So I was just saying, when John Ong, am I pronouncing your name correctly? So thank you so much for sharing about challenging different things through sociology. And I was just thinking, as individuals, we may not be able to just write letters to these big companies, although I think that all of us try and get form emails. But I just wonder if we formed an association and we really had a group and we really made it into a thing where it's like, we challenge you as a group, like maybe tarot inclusive. I'm not good at naming things. I'm not even gonna make a suggestion, but like if we had a group or an association where it's like, this is our association, like we send out newsletters about what's inclusive and have these kind of things come up, and we're able to challenge or look at a deck and be like, hey, this is a modern deck. Why does it only have this percentage of people? And to go on what you were saying, Abundant Life Tarot, I can't recall the last time I went into a coffee shop and I only saw one race. And yet a lot of times when you read these decks, they're just like, oh yeah, look, there's one Black person. It's like, I regularly see people in wheelchairs and same-sex couples and like 5 different races when I go to Starbucks. I mean, not during a pandemic, but normally, yes. So why isn't that reflected? And so I just think if we had an association, there's a lot of power in numbers, we might be able to make some lasting changes.
Will, I'm going to get to you in just a moment. So we asked the question of inclusion, and all people of color responded. Okay, dear white people, please chime in. Thank you, Anthony.
I popped my hand up. I might get dumped by my publisher for this, but hey, whatever. So a big part of the machine is definitely where we're spending our money, and we vote with our dollars. And I know that for a fact that when big publishers, and I can't speak of Llewellyn, but of big publishers, they sit down and they have a publishing schedule, and they have a very strict sort of like, okay, pick your thing. What is popular right now? What is going to be popular next year? What is going to be popular whenever? And then the artist and the author are often married up in that way, and then they go off and do their work unless they pick up an indie deck, which we thankfully have been seeing more of that because it's a direct, we cut out the middleman and more people are getting a chance to share their art. So they have a very strict calendar. So it's very much around the sales as well. So we have to remember too that we vote with our dollars and with what we share on our YouTube channels. And yeah, I'm totally guilty of sharing. I've got hundreds of unboxing videos because it is content, but I also understand that it's up to me to always have that conversation about the representation. And believe me, I've gotten hate for doing that. But yeah, there is that really important thing of knowing that for publishing companies and companies, they're there to make money for their shareholders. They're not here to make you happy, me happy, Will happy, Queen Osset happy. They're not. I mean, unless they're getting your money. So I really feel like it's up to all of us when we're purchasing as well to remember that these are big companies. And I probably just lost my publishing company.
No, you did not. No, you did not. See, because you said the key thing. You don't understand. Remember what I said in my opening statement. Every single one of you, first of all, let's address the hand raising thing. Just, I'm old fashioned, just do that until one of us, okay? And then we'll just have to work it out that way, okay? Your money, your dollars speak.
Yep.
Right?
So powerfully.
Right. And here's the thing. I have hundreds of decks that one card, I will admit it, you show me that one card in that deck and I'm putting down that $20, $30. And decks are not cheap. Average price now is $50, $60. That's one card out of many. Your money speaks. When you decide, you know what, I'm not spending my money here. These publishing companies, they're supporting, they're going to give you what you ask for. So as the public, you do have a say-so. You can say, you know what, I want to see, I want to be, I want more inclusion. You have a voice, and it may not happen. Of course, it's not going to happen in 6 months, a year from now, but we need to start seeing the trend where, okay, more decks are being produced. And yes, more decks are being produced that are more inclusive, but these are independent artists now. Kickstarter, I don't know about you guys, but rent or a deck, So we're talking about that balance now, right? So the mass market organizations, we are the ones that we're feeding that machine. We're feeding those machines. So Simon, if you have something to say, just raise your hand. Julie, I think you had raised your hand. You wanted to say something, darling?
I think
James,
Will was next, but
I'm sorry, Will?
Oh,
okay, so Will.
And Julie.
Then Julie, then Simon and James.
And Emmett.
And then Emmett and Liz. Okay, you guys keeping track of that? Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that what we're doing right now is really sending a powerful message. And I think that the more that our community looks like what I'm looking at right now, that message will be really, even stronger. I think when the publishers see that, okay, this is what they want, and they're serious about what they want, and they're going to produce that. They're going to be looking for that. And I think that we drive that. We just have to make sure that we keep this going, and that we don't let it, just kind of, have a window or a timeline, September 8th or whatever. Just continue it. Don't say that it's something temporary. Not even in our minds that it's something temporary. That this is permanent. That this is how we want it to stay. And the more we keep doing that, the better it is. And every little bit counts. Every little bit of support counts. I've been on YouTube for a couple of years, and I've had so much support, and that's what's really kept me going. And I really appreciate all of that. And I know that there's pushback. I know that a lot of you, when you produce content talking about these issues, that there's a lot of negativity that comes across, and I really, really appreciate that. And that really encourages me and really builds me up to continue, because tarot is inclusive to me. Like tarot in and of itself, that's one of the reasons why I go to it. But I think that, we just have to shape and form a different type of system. And so it's something that I think can continue to change and evolve. But I just want to say that all the steps that I'm seeing are beautiful, and I really do appreciate that.
Okay. Julie, I believe you were next.
Yes, hi. So I guess I was just wondering if just kind of going back to the whole idea of, mass market publishing and trying to take steps to change that dynamic. If there's anybody in the live stream or anybody else on the panel who has some more insider knowledge about the process of how the publishing company functions in terms of the different roles and, what goes into slush pile and whatnot, because I guess the way I saw, just the example of the Graydon House, when I saw that call for Black writers, they were calling for unsolicited manuscripts. And as someone who has submitted to publishing companies and has submitted to agents, I thought that was actually kind of a big deal that they were asking for unsolicited, meaning you don't need to be represented by a literary agent. So they're going to be taking on a mass amount of manuscripts without that kind of literary representation. And then, and I'm just being transparent, like I actually thought like, oh, wow. And they're actually like putting this call out all the way till September 8th, because it was like end of May to September, which to me, it was kind of like a really large bracket. And then seeing just aspiring Black writers who wanted to submit, showing that kind of favorable feedback. So maybe this stems back to what Eva from Ink and Flame is saying, where you have that disparity of people who recognize the pandering versus the people who think that this is a step forward. So I would love to get other people's opinions and feedback on that.
All right, who is next after Julie? Simon?
Simon.
Hi. Yes, so sorry about that. I've only just, everybody's been telling me where the thumbs up wavy hand is, and it's took me all this time. To find it. The question that was asked initially was, what is inclusion? And without taking up too much time, in my professional life, I work in education, and I'm a equality, diversity and inclusion advocate, trainer. And it's about, for me, the key word is participation when we're talking about inclusion. Now, I can stand in front of a room of people and I can talk about my experiences. I can talk about the prejudice I might have felt, but I can't really talk about other people's experiences without bringing them in, giving them a voice. I can talk about the Equality Act and what's illegal in terms of our language and our actions. I can talk about the policies and procedures that are in place. And you can tell people how to behave if they're an employee or a student. You can't change hearts and minds that simply. And there's a great concept, and I think we can emulate this in the community, which is having a human library. You know, we all have stories. We are all the sum of our own lived experiences. And it's about participation. It's about giving that platform to people. When you can only talk about your experiences, you need to elevate other people up and give them the voice. And this is a great first step, you know, and actually I'm glad that the first people to respond were people of color, because I want to hear that.
All right. Who's next after Simon?
Emmett.
Hi. So on the topic of inclusion, I wanted to discuss a few things that I was thinking about when it came to what I think of as authentic inclusion in tarot rather than tokenism, because that was another question that was asked in the email. And I do have some notes. I have never been on a live stream before, so I wanted to make sure that my thoughts were clear. So if you see me reading, that's why. But the first thing I thought of with that question of inclusion is that I would love to see a deck where I saw a representation of my own relationship in the Lovers card. So I was thinking of me and my partner. So both of me and my partner are queer, transgender, pagan witches, and my partner is Black and I am white. So I would love to see that inclusion of racial representation for my partner that also included Black people and people of color who are queer and who are transgender and disabled and, you know, openly gender nonconforming. So I wish that in tarot decks, there were bodies with gender affirmation surgery scars that were made visible. And I also wish that a Black trans woman would be depicted as the high priestess. And hearkening back to what Larissa said about, it was actually really interesting to me that they mentioned that about the Chariot card, because I also wrote a note about the Chariot card saying that I would love if a physically disabled person was represented in tarot as the Emperor or the Magician or the Star rather than the Chariot, because I feel like that sort of representation for like one aspect of someone's identity is sort of like not seeing past that person who is in a wheelchair, and it's sort of like dehumanizing and tokenizing that person where they're not given other archetypes to be represented by rather than just like the Chariot, because they're just being seen as, you know, their disability. So as well, I wish that a deck would be created with a guidebook that doesn't use the language of male and female or overuse or appropriate the divine masculine or feminine. So when I think about inclusion for decks as well, when it comes to racial inclusion and gender inclusion and all other intersections of identity, I would love to see this in decks that are not contemporary. So I see a lot of, you know, contemporary decks coming out, which I absolutely love, and I want to support those decks with more like contemporary imagery. But I also want to see decks with this type of diversity and inclusion of all kinds of decks, like historical, nature-based decks, just across the board. I would like to see that more normalize the symbolism of, you know, racial inclusion, gender inclusion, sexual orientation. I would like that to be more normalized throughout all types of decks. So that's my thoughts on that topic.
All right. And after Emmett, James.
Liz has been waiting, sorry.
I'm sorry, Liz.
Hey, everyone. So I was just thinking earlier when we were talking about how to get the larger companies to, you know, listen to us. I was thinking about how a few years back, all of a sudden, everyone wanted matte cardstock. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, we see all this matte cardstock. Why? Because that's what the consumers were asking for, and that's what the consumers wanted to spend their money on. So I think we have to do more and let the companies know, okay, this is what we want. We can't just say it among ourselves. I know that I do email companies, you know, one little voice, but, you know, if a lot of us said, hey, this deck is great, or hey, I'm not going to buy this deck, or I'm not going to buy any decks. This is what we want to see. I think as consumers, we really need to do that. Like I said, we got the matte cardstock. So how do we do that?
Okay. Havana, let James go. James has been waiting, okay?
So sorry. I was just thinking in terms of inclusion on more of like a less visible scale, but I think still very important, the analytics and how, I mean, we're streaming this on YouTube. We all are actively on various platforms, and that's where our voices are heard and where we're seen. And behind all of that, there are analytics, there are certain filters in place that really perpetuate and self-perpetuate divisions between different communities, different individuals. That was a big part, I think, mentioned at least in terms of even the election, and where there was some surprise in that the way certain things were delivered to certain audiences was because of content that they had been liking, and they were receiving content of that nature and not content that was reflective of the whole, but really this sort of warped view that they give to us based on what we like and what we're saying and where we participate. So I think even looking to the analytics and maybe the revision of how numbers play a role in what we see and do and where we have access to, and what that how that creates our view of the world. I think that that's something that could benefit from reevaluating. Similarly with how when certain issues come to light, it's very blatant where corruption is and those sorts of things. I mean, they've always been the case, but it takes a sort of highlighting effect for us to all take notice. So in terms of analytics, I think that that's important as well. I know Benabel made an amazing video about the disproportionate, where she mentioned the disproportionate amount of dislikes in addressing race in terms of the tarot and witch community. And I thought that that was like a beautiful way to touch upon that sort of category or topic within inclusion.
Yes. Benabel, when? Can you speak?
Sorry, Benabel.
You're on my channel, like seriously? Okay, you know.
Hi, actually, I was just listening. You're right, and I think from the perspective insider view, having been in meetings with some of the editors at all of the major publishing houses in the tarot community, what I keep on hearing whenever I raise the issue of inclusion is that, one, they say they're not receiving submissions, so they don't usually go out looking, right? They just pick from the slush pile, and they say a lot of times they don't get a lot of submissions from people of color, or they don't really know, right? They can't really tell. It's a very, there's so many layers to this issue. And second, one of the things that I've heard from many different publishers sort of like, whispered is they don't sell well. So I guess the question is, who are we addressing to create change? Like, who is the one that can be the true catalyst for change? I think it comes from the consumer base, because like Ethany was saying, money talks. And so if, diverse decks that really represented people in a sincere way was what sold, you bet your bottom dollar that that's what's going to be on the bookshelves. So I think that's a really important thing to look at. And I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this, but something that I started noticing very recently. So I started posting different photographs of tarot decks and who was featured in the decks. And Instagram has this wonderful function of getting to see the analytics. And I think numbers speak so much more than words, because numbers tell the truth. Words, people can express their support, but then is that support backed up by the numbers? And I found that that's just not the case. When you post photographs of tarot cards, I'm talking about tarot cards, not necessarily real people, but tarot cards that feature people of color, the analytics, the numbers are substantially lower than when I feature photographs of tarot cards of white people. Just something to think about.
Okay.
Havana, it looks like you had your hand up.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with what Benabel was saying, but I'm kind of skeptical of some of those explanations, because when I think of people are saying we vote with our dollars. It is hard for people like me to vote with my dollars when there are no decks that represent me. 80% of my deck collection is indie decks. That is because there are not a lot of decks out there that represent people like me. They don't represent people in the community that I know of. And when I think of excuses like that, it reminds me of, again, the film industry. When I think of movies like Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians, these are movies that were grossly underestimated, and then they performed above and beyond what anybody thought was possible. That is because people are not used to seeing themselves portrayed in those types of media form. And so when it's there, we're almost starved. We're thankful to see that. And I feel like publishers underestimate the potential of these cells just because they don't have anything to gauge it off of. And if you look at the indie deck community, there are plenty of decks out there featuring people from all backgrounds, whether it be racial, cultural, LGBTQIA+. These decks sell very well. And being a member of the Indie Deck Review team, I see this behind the scenes. I see what people are excited about. I see what people are starving for. So when I hear that publishing companies are saying, oh, the dollar potential is not there, I kind of feel like that's bullshit, excuse my French, but that's just my opinion about
Well,
that.
it comes down to the fact that most of the people saying that are probably white and versed in white experience and white literature. So they're making that decision based on a perception of whiteness. Sorry. Panda?
Anthony was next, I think, but.
Sorry. Ethany.
Sorry, what I wanted to ask, and maybe Panda can answer this for me too, is I know that another aspect, and I agree with what Benabel said on our chat, is like, this is just a reflection of what we hear from the other side, and it doesn't mean it holds merit, absolutely. But I would love to know, because when with my book, it was all about how much Ethany could sell. I'm sorry, that's just the truth of it. What's her reach? What's her ability to get this in front of as many eyes as possible? What's my popularity, which is really funny because I was very unpopular at school. So that is very much a part of what the thought process is. And what I would love to know from the people on this panel is, how can I, as someone who's seen as having white privilege and has an audience, how can I help make it so that there is more diversity being shown to a larger audience? Because unfortunately there isn't an equality or an equity in that. So I would love to, I would like to know from some people here that how we can do better with the people who do have an audience to help bring more diversity.
So I think that it's really important, like with inclusion, not only to be represented, but to not be stereotyped. The only thing worse than not being included at all is to be stereotyped, and to the point that it's offensive. But I think that it would still be profitable. I mean, tarot is so diverse, the world is diverse, and if we were represented as a whole, and that goes from, that's in everything, not just from tarot decks, it's to movies and everything else. I mean, Black Panther, like building on what Havana said, was like the first Black superhero movie, and that had astronomical profits because we were so excited to see that. And kids, Black kids, people like me, we had someone to look up to and to feel powerful. And so to be represented, not just stereotypes like within decks that are created by people that aren't people of color. A lot of times you see like just the tribal, like a lot of nudity, a lot of the older, I don't know, it's just stereotypical, and it's offensive, and there's other things as a whole to show, and that's not all representation of me or of all people of color. And so then even in movies, if you showed a Black movie like a coming of age movie, not just Black people getting murdered or Black people selling drugs, or just like a love movie, or why are all the movies dance movies, you know, those kind of things. So like if they were more included as a whole, I guess. So if you had a deck that wasn't just tribal, but was people of color and, you know, for equality, that was just, we have normal lives. And so if I think if it showed that, or I don't know, was better portrayed, that it would also be profitable, because that's relatable, I would say, for everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Kelly and Maddox, you were next.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, to Ethely's point about asking what can people with an audience and reach and a platform do to utilize their privilege. I've thought about that a lot, and it's, you know, it's been a bit of a journey for me, and I'm definitely only at the very beginning of it. But I want to learn as much as I can about using my platform to, you know, to raise other people's voices and to elevate their reach and to get eyeballs onto their channels and stuff like that. That's really the most helpful way, I think, of trying to figure out how I can utilize privilege that I've used to build my platform without, you know, I couldn't put it down. It's just a tool that I have. Unfortunately, I can't relinquish it. So it's built into the process of having built my platform, and I'm aware of that, and I want to be aware of that. And so for me, I think it's going to be more about welcoming people to use my platform for a time, rather than me just talking. And we all know I can do that. So, you know, that's one thing that I have thought about, and I'm exploring that a lot more, about, you know, talking about having my platform and it being, you know, me being aware that white privilege is a part of that. And, you know, how can I use it? I feel like, well, step off of it and give somebody else the mic basically on it. It's not to deflect from what they do on their own channel or their own Instagram or with their own business. I would like to get my audience to cross-pollinate with their audience, and I would like my audience to go there. It wouldn't just be like, oh, hi, come and enrich my channel and that's it. It's very important to make the point of like, go and subscribe and listen to this person. And go a bit more out of the box in terms of who you do listen to, as I've attempted to do as well. And the other thing I wanted to make a point to what Panda just said as well about moving away from stereotypes in the imagery. I'm so happy that we're having this discussion more and more, because I'm far more sensitive to stereotypes and tropes in imagery than I used to be. I'm far more sensitive to the clumsy way that an archetype can be reduced to a trope, or that we can tokenize so much and put something across in such a ham-fisted, such a negligent way that is so judgmental and so shallow. And I'm so relieved that I'm at least looking with more of a critical eye. I'm sure I have a lot more work to do, but definitely I agree with that. We need the variation of people's lives, and not just like, oh yeah, this is the one way that I can think of that this type of person would do this. It feeds into our ignorance, and it feeds into shutting the conversation down in our own minds, to like, yeah, that's what that person is. That's what I've always viewed them as. Like I think somebody was saying previously is about First Nations people, Native American people, that there's very strong tropes. I see them a lot more now, and I think that's part of my work as well. So I wanted to say that too.
Thank you. Jen, you wanted to say something.
So on the topic of, you know, how we as the consumers can indicate what it is that we want to see, and we can drive that change. I know and this is, I'm a little bit nervous to step into this because I know it's a bit controversial, and it's sparked some conversation that I have seen. And it's when we take it from even the publishers and take it to the artists, and what our expectations are of people who are actually creating decks. You know, I've heard a lot of people try and say to people, we're not telling you what to create, but we are letting you know what we want to see. Now, whether or not you choose to create that or to create something different, but I've seen some people get their backs up a bit on, well, you're telling me what to do, or you're trying to censor what it is that I do. And how can we drive that conversation forward in a positive, healthy way that encourages people to adapt to that change in a way that's positive without attacking anybody's work, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of interested to hear maybe what some thoughts are on that, because I feel like that's something that's tricky to navigate and letting people know. I appreciate what you do and what you put out there, but at the same time, setting those expectations on what I'd like to see.
Okay.
Did I just step in it?
No, you did not. Actually, you opened the way. I'm going to allow everyone to speak because these are things that I actually have been mulling over and thinking about anyway, and I'm going to address them from my perspective. Who's after Jen? Julie? Jen, Julie, Natalie? Jen, Natalie, Julie?
I think it was probably to an older point. I think I was maybe, I was just in terms of talking about, what, following Emmett's comment about what, I personally would like to see, because I do feel like in tarot decks, I do feel that Asians are sometimes shafted, when you see deck creator, these deck reviews and walkthroughs and people are praising the diversity. Okay, there are some Black and brown individuals there. And where are the Asians? It's like, East Asian, North Asian, West, I'll take any, where are they? So that's one way in which I'm not seen, or if there is an Asian represented, going back to the kind of tropes and the stereotypes, we don't always need to be carrying a samurai sword. I mean, samurai swords are great, they're badass weapons, but just things like that to be thinking of. So just kind of piggybacking on what a lot of people are saying about the stereotypes and the tokenism going on.
Okay. After Julie, it was Natalie.
Yeah, thank you. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier with publishers and what they're, what they say to, what I think was Benabel and Ethany were saying about they're coming back to them saying, well, we're not publishing them because nobody's buying them. And then Havana said, well, how am I supposed to speak with my dollars when there are no decks to buy? And this presents a double bind. And it's a really, really disgusting move on the part of publishers and on the part of really of anyone in a position to do something, to present it that way. And they do present it that way because they think that, I don't know what they're thinking, but it's extremely unhelpful to say the very least. And the example of Black Panther, I think, is fascinating because I was hungry for that. And I personally, I love watching movies, television, film that is completely about Black experience, because it's not my experience. And because it's an experience that I don't get to know, and it's the only way I can understand it. And so I think a lot of other white people clearly felt that way too, or a film like Black Panther would not have been as successful as it is, and I think that we're all underestimated a lot when it comes to that. But the double bind there is something that we're just going to have to overcome, because it's ridiculous and it's unfair and it's actually not true.
Who's next after Natalie? Because I have something to say to bring all of this in.
I think I had just one quick thing that I wanted to add.
Yes.
So in response to all the stuff about the publishing, I think that one thing, and I genuinely do not mean this in a contentious way, but I feel like if you grow up in either a marginalized or a minority culture, as a matter of course, you are expected to interact with media and stories that are outside of your own. So like, for instance, growing up Black, I liked mystery novels. If you like mystery novels, you're going to be reading white authors because that's what's there. Mm-hmm. And it's the same for any other, whether we're talking about LGBTQ or whatever. It's like, I want to read a romance novel. This is what's available. So it's what you're going to read. And it's just a matter of course that you are going to engage in experiences that are alien to you, because that is the dominant media through all forms. And yet on the outside, if you are a white person who is cis and doesn't have those, you don't have to do that, because you can easily find anything that reflects you and your interests. And I think that that does trickle into tarot. And I think that it is getting better. But in terms of publishers, that's what it is. It's like, well, you know, if we make a tarot deck of Black people or Chinese people, who's going to want to do that other than Black people or Chinese people? Whereas if they do a deck with all white people, they're like, well, of course, everybody's going to read with a deck with all white people. Why wouldn't they? And so I think that that's kind of a big part that's kind of unacknowledged. And I do think that we're making strides just by everybody stepping outside of their comfort zone and engaging in stories that aren't their own. But I do think that that's honestly part of the reason with the publishers why, even if it's unspoken, I don't know. That's just how I feel. Sorry.
Okay. Who's next?
Shaniqua is next, and then Will.
Okay.
So everyone's been making really, really good, poignant points, and I wanted to respond to a few. That's why you might have seen me writing down. So I heard several people talking about how to be a good ally when they are endowed with a voice, you know, with white privilege, and they're in spaces, particularly meeting with publishing companies about tarot decks. And I think that it's one thing to raise questions around the topic of inclusion and diversity, but I think it would go a step further when you're sitting physically in, or maybe virtually now, but when you're sitting in meetings with these people who have the decision-making power to enfranchise or disenfranchise Black folks and other marginalized people of color, it would behoove you to say, well, why am I sitting in a room with nothing but white people? And when you get partnered up, if you're either the artist or the guidebook writer, it would behoove you to say, well, if you want me to make an inclusive deck, why is it that the people I'm partnered with are all of European descent? They can't speak to the cultures that you want me to include in making this product. So taking it beyond asking questions and actually saying, no, I, as a white person that you want to go into business with, to make money with, am not comfortable sitting in a room full of white people making decisions that are going to affect people outside of our community. That's one thing. I'm sure that might be uncomfortable, but as an ally, you're stepping up to put yourself in uncomfortable positions because of the folks that you want to help who are unable to do so. So that's one thing to consider. And then you can also think about, like, this is more from a company perspective. I was sort of thinking about the publishing house that opened up a 3-month window to receive unsolicited manuscripts from Black authors. And what if instead of that, what if they had chosen to highlight a very small fledgling Black publishing house and say, hey, for this window of time, if you are a person of color or a Black person, of course, we'd be willing to take your manuscript, but we really want to highlight this small fledgling business that could use more support. And we really encourage you to go and support them, submit your manuscript to them or donate to them or whatever it may be. I think that might be very counterintuitive because in the business world, it's, you know, dog eat dog, winner takes all. But when we're talking about things that are going to have a lasting rippling effect across our society, sometimes you may have to sacrifice getting a little bit of profit in order to make sure that you're behaving in an equitable way that you can be proud of moving forward. And then finally, this is a little bit tangential, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on a company-wide platform. All of us would have the power to do this. But when I think about what it takes to make a tarot deck, some of you may know I'm working on my own tarot deck right now, and it's been a very eye-opening and learning experience. And to make a deck, it requires a lot of resources. Whether you're going to make the art itself or you're going to hire someone else to do that, it takes a lot of resources to create something like this. So what about encouraging people who come to your platforms to donate to programs that help encourage the arts within Black and BIPOC communities? What about encouraging people to donate to organizations that teach, you know, STEM skills to marginalized communities, because we've talked a lot about how data and numbers play into how visible things are going to be. So if we have more Black people actually working and you know, BIPOC and marginalized folks working on the actual coding that's determining how these things are being marketed and to whom and how frequently, those algorithms would change, and things that are marginalized will become more prominent over time because the implicit bias isn't being programmed into the computers. So all of those are things that all of us can do on some level to help enfranchise the marginalized that we want to see represented more. And I wanted to quickly touch on a topic that Emmett raised. I thought that their point was really, really good about authentic inclusion, because they made a good point about how if you want something to land well, it can't be tokenism and it can't be performative. So if I, as a person who's making a Black deck for Black people, wanted to include images that showed Black trans people, to be authentic in that, I need to bring in someone who's trans to actually teach me where are these scars going to be? How would they actually show through clothing? You know, what would be some body postures or something that I could think about when I'm drawing to actually indicate that this person is trans, because it's not my experience. And so the same thing applies when we have decks that maybe show an interracial couple on the Two of Cups, or maybe the Three of Cups has a Black girl, a white girl, and an Asian girl, and all 76 other cards are nothing but European images and culture being represented. If you want to be authentic in being inclusive, own the fact that you might need to ask for help from someone from the communities that you're looking to represent. And if you can't do that, in my opinion, I don't think that there's necessarily anything inherently bad in making an all-white deck in the modern era, but I think we need to understand why that might be seen as problematic, simply because right now and historically, the tarot community has been flooded with white images. So there's a question of, is this deck needed, or is it an act of hubris because you want to put your art out? You know, and there's a fine line there, because everyone has the right to make a deck. You know, if you want to make art, cool, that's fine. And if you want to put it out for sale, that's not inherently bad. But when you think about the absolute abundance and preponderance of white images within the tarot space, for me, it is, I think, a question of, you know, how much ego is coming into play when you knowingly put out a deck that is exclusive and all white in 2020, knowing how that's going to land in the current climate. So that's just kind of where my mind was on all of that.
Shaniqua, could you just share your name of your YouTube channel or your Instagram account, because there's a question.
They're both what Shaniqua's into. I'll type it into the YouTube chat, but they're both what Shaniqua's into. Only difference is on Instagram, there's an underscore between the words.
Thank you. If you could type it, that would be great.
I would also just really quick like to say that I appreciate like all the allies and you guys stepping into that uncomfortable space, because not everyone is doing that. So I don't ever want people to feel like they're being attacked or you're being blamed for something. It's all of our responsibility to do better and to heal old trauma so that we can move on in a healthier way. But just to always remember that that uncomfortable space that you step in and out of as an ally is where people of color live and we stay.
Thank you. I think Will, you were next. Queen said you just after Will, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, we live on such a diverse planet, and from a scientific perspective, diversity just makes anything stronger. And I think that publishers, they need to, you know, step off of that fear and just jump all in and say, okay, well, this is what, you know, they were thinking, this is what we think would happen if we produce decks that are a certain type that they wouldn't sell or whatever. Well, they have to let that go and really look at what was the context of that? What were people seeing in those images? Because, you know, when I go out into the world and I see other people of color, you know, they're at the grocery store, they're just doing normal things, you know, and the stereotypes, I think, really do cause damage, and they really do kind of make people kind of turn away from that. And I think it's important to have, you know, to include a diversity of things when we talk about making decks and making images, because that's what people want to see. And I really believe that people want to see that. And I think that the publishers are just, they're acting off of, okay, is this going to hurt me? But that's fear-based, and it just doesn't, it's not what they were doing, and the way that they were presenting these things was one-sided, I think. And I think that it just needs to be a more of an effort to make it something that, okay, when I go and I look for a deck, it's like, hey, you know, I can really relate to that. That I'm really feeling that, versus something that, you know, I only have this one pocket of something to choose from. And I think that all these things are important. I'm not saying that anything should be excluded, but what I'm saying is there just needs to be more. And you know, I'm working on a deck too, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it is a lot of effort, and it's going to take me time. I'm not going to make it to September 8th, but it's going to take time. It's my first one, and I really need that support going forward. It's not something that, if it's not there anymore, I'm just going to look back and say, oh, you know, I missed it. But you know, I think that we'll all miss out if we don't look at the beauty of everyone as a whole coming together, because the world is beautiful because it is diverse, and we just have to keep that in mind.
Okay. I'm not really good with excuses. Bump the big 4, 5, or whatever they are. I'm looking at a person on this panel who does reviews of indie decks. I also know for a fact that these big publishing houses, they troll places like DeviantArt and other platforms looking for freaking creators. So when they say that nothing's presented to them, that's bullshit. It is a conscious decision that they make. Why? Because white is the default. Okay? That's where everything starts. I have had the pleasure of speaking with a deck creator. Unfortunately, this deck was not published. It ran on Kickstarter, and many people are angry with this person right now because it's a long story, but that money went and people did not get their decks. And do you know why? Because he was told 2 things: to lighten his deck, number 1, and number 2, that a deck full of all brown and black faces would not sell. This was 5 or 6 years ago. So it's not that we're not presenting or offering or showing and creating, we are. But when you constantly run into that brick wall and that systemic belief that a particular vision is the way, it's exhausting. I'm going to throw another term at you. And you might be like, oh no, things are changing. I want you to think of implicit bias and how that plays out in your life. Because you might say, I'm not racist, I'm anti-racist. But I'm going to tell you that term implicit bias is the reason why a lot of these projects don't go forward. It's one of the reasons why many channels, YouTube channels, don't get the viewership, right? Now, this has nothing to do, and like I said, it's not a black and white thing. Don't get me wrong. This is across the board. Implicit bias is the reason why my sister, who is goddess size, has to book 2 seats on an airplane. It's the reason why when I'm standing at the counter in my store and I'm a manager, that someone else will go and speak to another manager. It's implicit bias. And believe me, this is not just done by white people to me. This is people who look just like me, right? Number 2, the Black experience is so vast. It's like a spider web. You only experience one drop of it. at any moment. But what I'm going to tell you is this. When I tell you my story, don't throw it back at me and say, that's nice, but I want to run it through this filter, because that can't be true, number one. Number two, I'm too lazy to do any more research on it. And number three, oh, it'd just be so much easier if I could just throw everything in one pot and just put it under one umbrella, because oh my gosh, okay? The deck, the flavor of the week. Where's that freaking book? You all know which one I'm talking about. No. That one. There's a story in the book that I have a problem with, okay? And it's a story about Yemoja. And what the creator did was take a piece of that story from Candomblé, a piece from Ifa, a piece from Santeria, a piece from Lukumi, and mixed it all up in a pot. And I know many people look at it and be like, oh my gosh, you did such a good job. From my perspective, it was dishonorable and egregious. When I sat with that deck, I could not understand why it bothered me so much. I waited for that deck. I anticipated the arrival of this deck. I've been watching it because I said I would buy a deck with one card, but there was something about that story. There's also another story in there that's problematic for me, because you talk about the Black experience. The Seven of Wands, John Henry. Of all the people in the Black experience that we could use to depict the Seven of Wands, you know, one of the women from Hidden Figures, Catherine. The story of John Henry, anyone know the story? Well, if you don't, he was a slave and he was in prison. And he was put out to do what they were called least labor when he was building the railroad. And because he's supposedly so big and strong, he laid down those tracks better than everybody else. He was incarcerated, he didn't get paid. But hey, you know how he got notoriety? He dropped dead. He dropped dead trying to outrun a piece of machinery, trying to do better. Now that story was how many years ago? And we are still here today, 2020, having to do twice as much. You want to support the community? Don't blame it on the big publishing houses. We have indie decks coming out the freaking wazoo. At the end of the day, you know, we're card slingers. For the most part, we need what, 2 or 3 decks. So we're buying decks by choice, right? They're art, pieces of art, books that we can go into. So again, you can make a conscientious decision. I'm not buying from Llewellyn, Schiffer, US Games, I'm not. I'm looking for indie decks. Sure, it's gonna cost me twice as much, but I'm gonna get something closer to what I want to use. Because you see, as a reader, I know, as a reader for me, when that client is sitting in front of me, it's not about me. It's that client in front of me. So if I was to pull out the Urban Tarot and I have a person of color sitting in front of me, and I put down the 10 of Wands, you know, it shows the person in the orange jumpsuit and their hands are shackled behind their back. That reading is done. You understand? That reading is finished because that person feels like, oh, that's how you see me. I don't care what was written in the guidebook. As a reader, you don't have time to go to the guidebook and be like, oh, explain this, da, da, da. No, no. We are visual animals, right? So I get it when people say, you know, I hear it. I want to see decks that represent me and all of that. Well, I come from a place where, you know, we don't use decks for divination, number one. Number two, I refuse to allow some pieces of paper validate who I am and tell me who I am. I refuse. I'm okay with you creating all white decks, but like Kim said, you put one card in there, I'm insulted and we're going to have an issue. Okay? Last point, and then I'm going to turn over the floor. Let's talk about allyship. I'm going to break it down for you right now. Number one, you don't get to appoint yourself as an ally. I appoint you as an ally. Okay? Take that term and take that word freaking seriously. Okay? Allyship. You have to be mindful because you sit in that place of comfort. When shit gets hot, remember I said at the beginning of this, how far are you willing to go to make a change? And that change is not going to be warm and fuzzy. It's not going to be clean. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be nasty. Those of you who have given birth, you know that being born, giving birth is not a clean ordeal. Okay? Allyship is where it begins. It's not where it ends. And that's why we're having this meeting today, because the allyship that we were into at the beginning of all of this, where is it? Where's that energy? Everybody was on board, yes. And here we are, September 6th. It's like a deflated balloon at the end of a party. Okay? So, allyship. It's okay, it's good, because it allows you to be in the space to educate yourself. And I know all of you, you bought all the freaking books, right? All of you, you got the books, all those books. You read them, you probably did the online things and da-da-da-da-da and all of that. How many of you actually applied any of this outside of your small circles? Right? Yeah, okay. Because this is not something that happens in 90 days. You know, I am teaching Kasha and Renee and Tom. I'm telling them things because, and they're willing to listen to, even though I'm angry about things. And many of you are not strong enough to face and sit in that place of a person being freaking angry and just allowing us to have that voice and express ourselves. You want us to do the emotional labor for you. Still, even though you say, oh no, and I've heard white people, white people, white people, white people, you know, they've done the emotional labor for you. But in the back of your minds, you're thinking, could you just make it not so harsh for me? I can't handle it. I really want to be an ally, but right now I'm uncomfortable. My family member's gonna be pissed off at me. I'm gonna lose my job. Well, you have to decide. At some point, I'm telling you, you're gonna have to decide. What kind of society do you wanna live in, right? And you have to fight for it. You have to wanna make this change. And this is all of us working together, okay? We have to be ready and willing to tear down the systems, not just the little things that happen. You have to be willing to like really get into the systems, like I said, the root, and tear this shit down. Okay? Now, since everybody likes to read, I'm gonna give y'all a book. Hood Feminism, last chapter, the 3 phases: allyship, anger, then accomplice. And that's where I want you to be. I want you to be a freaking accomplice. I don't need any more damn allies. I don't want any. Because that means I have to backtrack and make sure you're taken care of. Are you okay? Are you in a good space? Oh, you're feeling what? Butt hurt right now? Oh, you poor thing. Nope. I told you at the beginning. No. If you mean to do this and make a shift, then become an accomplice and know. And here's the thing, many people come from a place of fear, but at the end of the day, what you think you're gonna lose, you probably won't. You're supposed to let it go anyway. I mean, we're supposed to be spiritually elevated, right? So stop holding on to shit. Let the tower moment happen. Stop trying to hold that bitch up. Let it collapse. Let it go. So the dust can settle. We can move that shit out, turn that soil over, and plant fresh seeds. Become an accomplice. I don't want anyone to tell me I'm an ally. I've seen the outcome of people being allies. I've seen it. And it's never been to my benefit. It's been to theirs. So, with that, I am complete. I put the talking stick back in the middle. Oh, wait, no, I'm not.
You'll go.
Okay, sorry, okay. All right, we're gonna move forward. So I have several deck creators here. And we did a little fun project. Remember Renee and Kasha and Tom, where we were asking particular questions and certain things, okay? Because maybe we just need to peel back as creators of across the board. And I found this thing, one of my tarotistas gave to me, and I was like, you know what? These questions can apply. I don't know if deck creators even think about these questions. So, Kasha, Renee, Tom, you guys got your questions? I mean, I have some. I have them here. Do you remember what we're talking about? No? Okay. It's just certain things. Okay, so I know Jennifer had talked about deck creators being in their feelings when they are approached, okay? And, ooh, that's okay, Larissa, we're good. It is good. Okay, so I do understand that creators create from their perspective and their experience in the world as well, okay? But it does feel like tokenism and an afterthought when you include something in whatever it is that you're creating without having done any research. As much as I don't like the Goracle, there is a lot of information there that you can cultivate. And then when you take it to whoever is going to publish it or, you know, second set of eyes, ask the question. Okay? Thank you for that announcement, Kasha. Okay. All right. So, Renee, do you have questions? Remember your questions? You remember the exercise we did the other night? Okay. So as deck creators, and this is all deck creators, these are questions that have no identity attachment, so to speak.
One of the things that we were speaking about when we were looking over the questions that your tarotistas brought us is, if your life is not diverse, then as a deck creator, or even an artistic creator of anything, do you have the tools you need to create an artwork of diversity or a tarot deck of diversity? It's just something to keep going back over. You know, it is very disrespectful to create a picture of something that you think you kind of know sort of about. And I think this is what Queen Osset was referencing, when you just put a bunch of stuff together, smash it and be like, oh, this is a myth from this religion. But if you don't actually know, then what you're trying to do with your diversity or inclusion is really disrespectful. So then when you're creating something, the question is, do you even have the tools to know what you're creating? That was one of the questions that we were going over.
Okay. Tom, do you remember the other questions that we were asking?
Yes, the other one that I remember specifically was, who is this for?
Okay. That was one of the questions, right?
Yeah.
Because I even asked Tom that.
And you know, it's interesting because when you look at my channel, for example, a lot of my videos are for white people to hear what I'm trying to like translate into the world. So, you know, it is an interesting thing to sit with, you know, to say, okay, look, I'm actually a lot of times making videos for white people to hear this message that I've been learning for the last few years, you know? And that's a thing that it's like, you know, it's uncomfortable to say, hey, I'm making this for this reason, but it is helpful. And even in my new book, I have to sort of sit with that because there's a big section on bias in reading. So it's a powerful question I wasn't prepared to answer when you asked it to me, but I've been thinking about it the last few days.
All right. Yes, Larissa, as a matter of fact, on my last walkthrough for the messages from the mermaids, I brought that card up and the whole story behind it. Yeah. Okay. So this is something I found for like product development. For all of you, this is everyone's. These are just questions for you to ask. And your product will do different things. So let's say this question: how might cultural habits change how your product is used? And how might your product change cultural habits? And then I want you to think, what context would an alien from outer space need to use or understand your product? What social norms, etiquette, or traditions could change because of your product? Okay.
Queen Osset, I have these 2 more questions which we discussed before as well. I would like to add them because I think they're great.
Go ahead.
How does your product create new ways to interact?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's for the creative thinkers to answer. And also when you picture your user base, who is excluded? Something to think about for all of us.
Yes, okay. What happens if 100 million people use your product? I just want you to think about the impact. If 100 million people use your product, how might a community change if 80% of your residents used your product? So basically what I'm saying is that you as a creator, you have it in your power, in your hands to actually initiate change. Okay? How about this one? What is the worst headline that your deck or product, what is the worst headline that you can imagine? Right? Because we're always, I know as creators, we're thinking like we're putting out the best there, but what is the worst headline? And operate from that place. Okay? In what scenarios could your product cause harm or endanger people? If your product was used entirely opposite of how it's intended, what does that look like? Right? And we know Germany, a few years ago, an emblem was used, right? Yeah. Okay.
Cultural appropriation, by the way.
Well, okay, here's the thing. So here's the thing how I feel about cultural appropriation. Everybody appropriates, okay? Let's get that off the board. It becomes a problem when you tell me that I can't do what I was born into doing, but then you take it and you profit off of it. And that to me is appropriation.
Or when like Nazis did, they take
I was trying not to use that word. I was trying not to do that.
Okay, so what's the during the war when you take swastika symbol and you change it completely the meaning of it, right?
Right. Sure. Exactly. Okay. Who or what disappears if your product is successful? What industries, institutions, or policies would be affected? And then the forgotten, right? And I think Kasha touched on this. When you picture your user base, who is excluded? If they would use your product, what would their experience look like? And I can tell you, from a Black woman using all freaking white decks, we learn to adapt, which is unfortunate because we know that white is a default, right? That's the thing that we're trying to do, is break down that system that has supported us to this one little limb of this tree. We have learned how to adapt to a system that doesn't recognize us, doesn't honor us. And we're supposed to be okay with it. You can see by the plethora of new decks that are coming out. It's like, oh yes, we hear you, but you know, I'm still gonna put out this deck, right? Because who's spending the money? Okay, all right. Whose perspective is missing from your deck or product development? Now, pretend the opposite of your assumptions about your core user are true, the opposite of your core user. How does that change your product? So here's a trigger. Karen. Karen is the suburban housewife with disposable income, and many decks are created for the Karens of the world. And this is not even something you have to even imagine, because most of you see the behavior of the Karens now, which is totally not what you expected, right? The Karens of the world was supposed to be 2.5 kids, white picket fence, Volkswagen, da 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 da. Now you've got Karen tearing up grocery stores and accosting people in the parking garage. And these are people who are buying your decks. Now, how do you feel about your creation that you put out there? If your product or deck was entirely dedicated to empowering the lives of an undeserved or underserved population, what kind of impact could it make? Who could your product most directly benefit outside of your target users? How would you change your product or your deck to better serve them? And then you also want to think about, maybe this is, I don't know, I've never created a deck, but what would cause people to lose trust in your product? Yes, Kasha, I do. As a matter of fact, we're getting it now, so. What could make people feel unsafe or exposed? Remember the Ten of Swords debacle from the Lightseers Tarot deck, right? What mechanisms are in place for listening to your users? If two friends, who am I letting in? Oh, if two friends use your deck or your product, how could it enhance or detract from their relationship? Yes, I will. How does your product change or create new ways for people to interact? Let's see. How would a community of your most passionate users behave? In what ways might the community be an asset? And in what ways might it become a liability? If your product involves discourse, what does positive and negative communication look like? Okay. Let's see. What would predatory and exploitative behavior look like with your product? Again. Let me see. How does your product encourage users to engage? And how does it make it easy to disconnect? How does your product respect people's boundaries and the other parts of their lives? Yeah, I got something, I'm gonna tell you what it's called, if you can see it. It's called the Tarot Cards of Tech. Nothing to do with tarot, per se, outside of being an oversized deck that I have yet to cut down that had these questions. These are people who develop products, but I felt that these questions were so poignant to us developing these decks and to other people who, you know, all of us creators, everyone, even your content. I like to say that my channel is a little bit different. It's the Maverick. I wanted my channel to cause people to think. I wanted to share my experience. When I look at that deck, I want you to hear my experience in looking at that deck. Some decks I'll never do a walkthrough of. I'm not going to do a walkthrough of the Divine Tarot. No. Everyone loves that deck right now. And I see it as something that is just, that's the surface of it. It's a beautiful deck. But from what I see, not a lot of research went into it. And I know about stories and fairy tales, but I'm telling you my story. I'm telling you my fairy tales. Why would you want me, why do you want to whitewash that? Why would you want to discredit me that? Why would you want to diminish my story? Okay, I'm finished. I don't have anything else to say. I mean, I'll wrap up later, but I don't have anything to say. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just thinking we probably slowly should wrap it up because soon everybody's brains will explode by the looks of it.
Really?
We've been over 2 hours now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? So imagine how I feel. Okay. Yeah. Every day my head explodes and then I pick up the pieces and I put it back together and then I put it back on.
Yeah.
You understand? What did I tell you before we got on live? Yeah?
Yeah.
What did my son tell me just 2 hours ago before we got on?
Do you want to share?
My son told me that he was advised not to use his birth name on his resumes. Okay? He was basically told to pretty much whiteify his name. So when I say that I'm dealing with this on every level, every day, so your head is exploding, your head is exploding. A few minutes before we got on, my head exploded. This is why I'm wearing a head wrap. This is why I keep it all together, honestly. I have to process all of this stuff, and then I have to be a fairly decent, normal human being because I don't want to become part of the prison system.
Mm.
Okay?
Well, then does anyone else want to say anything after Queen Osset these questions, or how do you guys feel? Shaniqua, go.
Those questions were amazing. So thank you for posing them. And as awesome as they were, I really was just struck by what you just said, Osset, about how I can't speak for any other folks of color, but me, just this one Black woman, my head explodes multiple times every single day. You know, we can have the privilege to get on our Wi-Fi, hop on this Zoom call, and talk about these things from an intellectual perspective. But when I walk outside, if I choose to wear Bantu knots and I'm going to a job interview, they may say, oh, she looks a little too ethnic. They won't say that to me.
Right.
They will exclude me because of my identity.
Right.
My name is Shaniqua. One of the first things that we talked about when we kicked this off was, how do you identify Blackness on paper? Is it by stereotypical names? I've been told by both white people and Black people that I should make a nickname for myself, like Shawnee or Sean or something. You know, the aggressiveness against Blackness that we have to navigate through every single day is not something that I want to be celebrated or lauded or pitied for, but I do want it to be recognized when we're engaging in discussions like this, that, just gonna put it out there from my perspective, for the white people engaging in this conversation, this is a luxury. This is something that you can choose to do. But whether you're someone with a platform or not, if you're a person of color, you are forced to confront these issues because of your skin, because of the body you are born in that none of us have control over. So it's just something, another layer for, I think, people to think about. And I wanted to also make a response to something that Osset said about allyship. I'm right there with you. I do not want allies, because I think when things become buzzwords, they lose substance. It's the same thing with diversity and inclusion. When things become trendy or socially acceptable or buzzwords, people don't think about what they mean. And I had a personal experience with someone on social media, a young white woman, who was asking for tips on how to be an ally to Black women. But I was reading some of her comments and I responded, I think that you need to do some work around your identity with whiteness before you can ask to be given steps to take to become an ally. And we exchanged a few times, but I could tell that she felt attacked. And she ended the exchange with saying, look, this isn't about race. And I just quoted her back in my response. You want to be an ally to Black women, but this isn't about race. So I just think that in closing, remember that when you, as a white person, are asking yourselves questions about diversity and inclusion and tolerance and all of these things that have become so popular nowadays, ask yourself if you're thinking about it from the perspective of, okay, I'm putting myself in this mindset right now, or the perspective of, this is the reality that the people I want to help live with every second of every day. You know, I'm a mom, my daughter's 5, but before I found out I was having a girl, I was terrified at the notion of having a boy. Not because I wouldn't love to have a son, but because I know that every day, even if he is an 8-year-old playing with a toy gun in an open carry state in a park, if he is doing that in brown skin, the authorities who are sworn to protect and serve my community can come up and murder him with impunity. Right. And my white allies get silent and there's nothing happening as I'm putting my child in the ground. So think about how there's a privilege to look at race and the issues that rise from that in a temporary kind of, I'm looking at this now mindset versus this is my reality. So when you show up to be an ally, remember that. My brain has to explode every day, multiple times a day, from having my sexuality, my appearance, my intellect attacked at every angle. And that's not something I can escape from by logging off. So just keep that in mind when we're having these discussions, because there is no reprieve for the folks of color that we're looking to help.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
John? Oh, sorry.
I can't see everybody.
Yeah, just to say very quickly that I so appreciate this space and the very diverse range of emotional registers that we are able to express in the tarot community. So I'm starting to get into crystals and that sector, that community is very middle class, much more white, much less diverse than we are. And so I think we do have a wider vocabulary to talk about anger, depression, and these very deep feelings of hurt and injustice. And I so appreciate that about our community. I feel so much more welcome here than in other spaces of wellness culture and spirituality. So also just to, in a way, kind of just shout out to the incremental achievements that our community has been able to have in terms of making space and giving space for other people. I'm also thinking, and this just jumping off to what Kellyanne had said about not really giving voice, but giving space for others. I've seen some accounts do Instagram takeovers for Black-owned businesses. This is more in the crystals community and everyday magic. Baccarat Wintner, who's a tarot designer, right? Away Home Tarot. So I thought that was such a great way for which she could ethically extend and amplify other people's businesses and voices. And then just a final point around education. Simon had mentioned that he's an educator himself, and a lot of us here offer classes and also offer ways to help seekers and our clients, right? And I think I have seen, and just much more recently, much more normalized, how sliding scale opportunities are there for students, also for clients. So people of color are able to be included and are able to participate in some of these classes. And I think that's a good way for which to us to expand inclusion and participation in our community. So I'll just end there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who wants to bring us home? No one? Okay. You guys like to read? I'm gonna give you another book suggestion. It's the hot book. All right. Get this book.
Will you say the author's name, Queen Osset? Because we can't quite see it.
Resmaa Menakem.
Thank you. I will say that I feel like when Queen Osset and Renee and Kasha and I have talked, we've kept saying that this feels like the beginning of a conversation. And so, you know, hopefully there's an appetite to sustain, you know, more frequently this kind of panel, this and to expand it even. I hope, you know, it's talking isn't enough, but it does lead to perception shifts. And I've had my perceptions shifted a few times in the last couple hours. So, which is such a gift. And it's really what, I mean, I say all the time, I feel like I don't know how a diviner or someone who's interested in tarot cannot see humanity and the suffering of humanity and not want to participate in changing that. Because what we do is try to make sense of the unmake sensible. And, you know, it's not fucking easy to do that. And it's not easy to look at ourselves and say, wow, you know, what a dumb thing I've thought for so many years. But, you know, until that happens, and I mean, it's like every day, you know, we have an opportunity to look in the mirror and say, okay, what stupid thing can I undo? You know, I've had my mind blown in many ways today. Anyway, it's so easy for me to ramble, but I'm just really grateful and so moved and so hopeful and just really thankful. You know, Queen Osset has shared so much of herself with us, with the three of us in leading up to this and today as well. You know, that's a vulnerable thing to do. And I think I'm so thankful to have a person who is willing to do that, because you know, it's not easy, and to do it publicly in this forum is even harder. So thank you, Queen Osset, for sharing that, and for, you know, just being, you know, a great human being, and someone that I admire so much, because you're so open with the people that you decide to be open with. So yeah, I'll say that. I hope that this is the beginning of a conversation, and that we can keep having it, and that conversation leads to action.
I hope that this is the first of many town hall meetings. So I'm going to put it on my schedule, 90 days, and that's a long span of time, right? It took us 90 days to get here. I've given you a whole lot of questions. When you buy your decks, use those questions. Like when you're doing your deck walkthroughs, use those questions. Educate your viewers, educate your audience, right? Use some of those questions like, hey, okay, now I'm going to ask you one other thing. So it's been 90 days, you know, BLM, and we're supportive. So who here in the past 90 days has bought a deck created by a person of color? Less than 50% of you. How about that? What? Can't find a deck to buy? Really? So your assignment for the next 90 days is to seek out a creator. There are indie decks. Just try one. If you don't own a deck with people of color, if you don't own a deck fully with people of color, buy one. Seriously. It will be an experience. It will give you something to bring to the conversation. You can ask questions. You know, you can say, hey, Queen, why is this way? What does this mean? Right? It's a way to open a conversation. It's a way to have the dialogue. We may be diviners and card readers, but very few of us are mind readers, right? So that's one of your, so you have two assignments, because I'm going to be watching your walkthroughs. I don't care if it's a mass market deck. I don't care if it's a gift. Use some of these questions. When you are putting your content out on your channel, use some of these, think about some of these questions that you're putting out there. Like, who am I going to speak to? Because believe it or not, I send a lot of my people to a lot of channels to watch people that don't look like me, don't have experiences like me, simply because they have something that I feel that they can share, right? That also, I'd like you to search out some creators on YouTube, people of color. Don't follow them because they're a person of color. Don't do that. Follow them because they have interesting content, and you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go back to see what she has to say. So don't go into somebody's channel and be like, oh my God, this is a Black woman. Let me go ahead and subscribe. And then you never go back to her channel. Right? We talk about doing the work, shadow work, right? That means looking at the shit that's there and let's do something with it. It's manure, right? Let's do something with it. Let's grow something different moving forward. I mean, if you cannot end 2020 and not have learned something, whatever happened, spirit, Great Pumpkin, White Rabbit, whatever, they all conspired to put us in a place where we have to keep our asses still. You have to stay home for the most part. You are limited. You're limited to your distractions. You're limited to your engagements. All the surface shit, all the superficial shit, coffee clubs, nightclubs, girls' night out, movie theaters, all that taken away from you. I feel like we've been granted a gift to build something new. And we got to look at this ugly monster called racism once and for all. and take your place. It's either you're for it or you're against it. There is no gray area. And if you're for it, there'll be casualties. I will take you down. I will fight you. But if you're against it, even on a micro level, you can make a change. You know, I always say 1 grain of sand can make such a big impact. I'm going to leave you with this. Just imagine that 1 grain of sand in your eye. Right? That's it. I think I've given you everything. I'll send out a notice, I guess, when we do this again. If you're interested in doing this again, you have any questions, you got my email address. Anyone who's listening, I don't know what's going on in the chat. Is there stuff going on in the chat?
Yes, there is.
Oh my gosh. Chime in. If there are other people in the community who are listening, they want to be part of the town hall, you're more than welcome. I know everyone was concerned, like, oh my gosh, all these people. Really? I think this is like fascinating. I'm gonna get a bigger screen because I figure if I have a bigger screen, I can get more, I can see more people. Yeah. Yeah, if there are channels that we want to invite, let us know. I'll be reaching out to you. You know, Shaniqua, thank you so much. You were like, I didn't think that I had enough experience. I figured, you know what? You're breathing oxygen upright. Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I am really honored and humbled to be sharing space with so many awesome people. I mean, I'm looking at this screen and I have learned from so many different people who are here that I'm a little bit starstruck, but you know, just trying to keep it calm. But I wanted to just leave everybody with an invitation to create, you know, whether that's a deck or content that speaks to the issues that we've talked about here, putting out things for the populace to consume does change the collective dialogue that we're having and just our collective perspectives around things. So if you're a person of color and you have an idea for a deck, but you can't draw a stick figure, figure it out. There's a way to do it. As long as you believe that you can, whether that means you need to hire an artist or pay $20 to sign up for a 3-hour online class to teach you how to draw, you absolutely can. Whether that's holding spaces like this or, you know, making thought-provoking memes, it doesn't matter. I think that art reflecting life is a real thing, but life is also a reflection of our internal state. So if we're collectively choosing to shift our collective internal state into one that is healthier and more inclusive and not repressive and exclusive, then create in that vein and encourage as many people as you can to do so, and we'll start to see those changes happen. And thanks again for having me.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
You know, Sir?
Yes.
Just from the community and in terms of the comments, a couple of questions really. One was the questions that you've posed.
Yes.
You're posting them or sharing them somewhere so people can have sight of them.
Yeah.
And another from Integrated Healing with Sadhana said, this has been recorded.
Yes.
Would this be shared with the major publishers?
I'd like it to. All your contacts, share it. Look, put it out there. You know, it says it's live on YouTube, so it's recorded. We'll get it there. Yeah, everybody gets it. Anyone you want to share it with.
I'm also recording it just in case something went lost on YouTube.
Oh, good. Okay, good. You know, yeah, most definitely. You know, I have followers on my Instagram that know nothing about tarot, want nothing to do with tarot, and they follow me on Instagram. My Instagram page is not all tarot. My belly dance community will see this. My sewing community, costuming community, they'll see this, because these are conversations, believe it or not, that we've had on those levels already. We started having those conversations a couple months ago. Yeah. Yes, Maha.
Can I say something? I had my hand up a few times, but I couldn't get through also because I was having camera difficulties.
Oh gosh.
I've been enjoying every minute, every second of everybody's communication and sharing here. I'm really, really proud to be a part of a group where there is no hierarchy. Like, everyone here is from channels with like many subscribers to smaller channels, and then yet we're all on this like equal ground here, sharing this really important topic. And just touching on what everybody was saying, I think like society is made up of individuals, and I think here we are stepping onto making a change. And slowly, I feel that the big publishers will catch on, like Liz was saying, how they changed the matte finishing. And I know that everybody always talked about borderless. Now I notice decks are becoming borderless. So I think when we start talking about these things, the word does get out. And so the fear that the publishers have, I think it starts with us being fearless and sharing about what we feel. You know, like Will was saying that, yeah, people are there's stereotypes, you know, within people of color. Like, for example, I'm Middle Eastern, and I don't know any other Middle Easterners on YouTube that create content. I mean, maybe there are, but I have never seen even one. So I feel like I'm almost like a minority within the minority. And personally, I've never seen any Middle Easterners being represented in tarot, you know, and I feel like not just with tarot, but with society in general, whenever they want to make something including people of color, they'll put like, okay, here's one Black person, here's one Asian person. Okay, so, you know, that's enough, we did it. And then it's like, we don't see any other people of other nationalities and ethnicities and colors and backgrounds, you know, and we're just there are so many varieties of human beings on Earth, and it's like we're all yet connected. So what I just want to say is I'm really feeling I'm feeling a lot of gratitude to be a part of this community and also this platform right now, to see all these faces of people who are really genuinely and honestly wanting this to go out there. So I just wanted to thank you, everyone, for your courage to be here and for your interest. You know, we're making a change, I believe. So thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to just say that, just touching on everybody's final points, that we talk a lot about the community as a whole, but this community is driven by individuals. So that means every single person in this community has the power to change. If there's something that doesn't sit right with you, it is okay to ask. If people are offended by questions, that's their problem. You should continue challenging things until you have an answer that's acceptable. And even when you have an acceptable answer, go above and beyond that. If you see that there are people that are not being represented, demand that they be represented. And like Shaniqua was saying, create. If you're not seeing yourself, if you're not seeing people that you want to be represented in this community, you can create. And even if it's not creating a deck, you can create a YouTube channel, you can create an Instagram account, because everybody's experiences continue to drive representation within this community.
Right. I'm going to say this one thing, though. You have a choice. You don't have to create a deck that's inclusive, but then you won't get my money. And believe me, your deck eventually, especially if I say, nah, and I let my followers know, no. So think about that. Your money is your power. I'm telling you, don't underestimate that. You have a choice of where you want to spend your money. You don't have to. And you know, we get into this FOMO mood. That's another thing too. You know, many of us have decks. I mean, I have decks. I'm not going to speak for it. I have decks I still have the shrink wrap on. Right? Yeah. So it's a choice. It comes down to a choice. So your choice, whether you realize it or not, you can affect change across the board by standing in your power and really seeing what you can do. Do not ever think that, oh, I'm just a small channel. I'm a small human being. My voice is low. My voice is small. I've got so much going on in my life. What I have to say is not going to be effective, blah, blah, blah. Believe me, it will. You might have to do something like this. I felt that my voice was being diminished. I never doubted in a million years that I would have this turnout. I never questioned it. I knew that there were certain people that I asked would say no. I knew that. But here's the thing, they can never come to me and say, I wasn't asked. And that's why we'll do a town hall meeting again. There'll be an opportunity for everyone to speak. Let's see where we progress by the end of the year. Let's do an end of the year wrap up, you know? Let's see. So we can bring in 2021, hell, a little bit differently, okay? We don't have to lean on, quote unquote, the idea that the government's controlling everything, the big publishing house is controlling everything. No, you are the publishers. Seriously, they just produce and manufacture. I need to shut up because I'm talking a lot now. I need to save some for the next time, right? But you all have your assignments. So the next time we meet, I'm going to try to be silent because I'm excited to see what you're bringing to the table. Everyone's quiet now. Yeah, you're not going to get any followers like this on YouTube.
Well, I think the silence may actually be an internalizing.
Yeah.
Literally just typing internalizing. I don't know. I feel like I do better after I get a lot of information just thinking about stuff, because I find that if I react from a place of not thinking about things, then it doesn't really let me get as much wisdom as I can from it. And there's just been a lot. And I feel like if I felt like I'd gotten everything in 30 seconds, and I'd be doing a disservice to the amount of information that you guys gave to me. So it's a good thing for me personally that I'm like, I feel like I need to think about this and journal about it instead of just talking. Like, you have to listen and internalize things so it's a permanent change, for me at least.
Okay. I take my role as a fellow human being seriously. I'm not afraid to reach out to you. You can ignore my email, but you probably won't. And Tom Benjamin can tell you, we had an interaction last year that was not pretty. He listened and I listened. And that's how it has to happen. You can't run away from it. You can't be in that place of being like, oh, it's negative, negative. No. Remember, it's just a form of energy that you can transmute as well. Stop giving power away to things as an excuse to bail out. I'm asking you all to do this for my son and my son's sons and their sons. This is a plea for my son's life. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Leave your comments. You know how to reach me. Take care. Stay blessed. say goodbye, and then I'll stop the recording on YouTube so we can have our behind the scenes. Kabosh.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks, Queen Osset, so much. Just one last sentence.
Yes, dear.
It's like, oh, for organizers, but actually, as Tom Benjamin mentioned before, it was your idea. And I thank you for your friendship. I'm not afraid to use this word. You are a beautiful human being, but yeah, you're a great teacher, and I really appreciate that you showed up vulnerably and you invited all of us, and that we could help out even in the little, a little way. So thanks everyone also from the guests to joining, to answering yes, and to everybody in the chat for being there. And yeah, let's see each other next time in 90 days.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
all so much. Bye, guys. You have your assignments. I'm going to be checking in.
She will. Thank you. Bye.
All right. I am going to stop the recording.